Imagine an empire so vast that a messenger could ride for weeks and still not reach its edge. Marble cities glittered under the Mediterranean sun, Roman legions marched with unstoppable discipline, and the emperor's word echoed across 3 continents. Yet, this same empire, once the unrivaled ruler of the known world, didn't fall in a single night of fire and chaos. It crumbled slowly like a grand statue, cracking bit by bit, almost imperceptibly, until one day it finally collapsed. This is the story of how the Roman Empire fell in slow motion. The fall of Rome wasn't one catastrophic event, but a centuries-long unraveling. To understand it, we have to travel back to the 2nd century AD during the reign of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. This was the so-called Golden Age of Rome, but beneath the polished marble, cracks had already begun to spread. The empire had reached its maximum size, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. Its borders were immense, its armies stretched thin, and maintaining control required staggering resources. The wealth of conquest that had once fueled Rome's rise was drying up, because there were simply no more rich lands left to conquer. After Marcus Aurelius came his son, Commodus, a man more interested in playing gladiator than ruling an empire. He strode into the arena dressed as Hercules, striking down opponents for sport. But while he amused himself in the Colosseum, corruption and mismanagement festered in the government. When Commodus was assassinated on New Year's Eve in 192 AD, Rome entered a tailspin known as the Year of the 5 Emperors. Civil war erupted as generals fought for power, draining the treasury and weakening the army. The empire wasn't collapsing yet, but the first domino had tipped. Then came the 3rd century, a time historians call the crisis of the Roman Empire. In just 50 years, Rome had more than 20 emperors, many of them killed by their own soldiers. Imagine the instability. Emperors rose and fell like waves in a storm, provinces broke away to form their own mini-empires, and barbarian invasions became more frequent. Plagues swept through cities, killing millions. Trade routes faltered, coinage was debased, and inflation soared. A once mighty empire was gasping for breath, staggering under its own weight. One of the most fascinating figures of this era is Emperor Aurelian. He was a military genius who, against all odds, reunited the fractured empire in the 270s. For a moment, it looked like Rome might recover. But even Aurelian's victories couldn't cure the empire's deep-rooted problems. The army had become both its backbone and its biggest threat. Emperors ruled at the pleasure of the legions, and loyalty could be bought with gold rather than earned through allegiance to Rome itself. Then came a twist. The empire didn't collapse entirely. It split. In 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian decided that the Roman Empire was simply too large for one man to govern. He divided it into East and West, creating 2 administrative capitals, Nicomedia in the east and Rome, or later Ravenna, in the west. For a time, this worked brilliantly. The Eastern Empire, wealthier and more urbanized, flourished. The Western Empire, however, was increasingly vulnerable, besieged by both enemies without and wrought within. In 312 AD, Constantine the Great seized power and made another dramatic move. He founded a new capital, Constantinople, on the site of Byzantium. This glittering city on the Bosporus became the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire. While Constantinople rose, the city of Rome slowly faded into the background. Power was shifting eastward, and the West was left exposed. Meanwhile, along Rome's vast borders, something was stirring. Entire peoples, the Goths, Vandals, Huns, and Franks, were on the move. Pressured by the terrifying advance of the Huns, the Goths sought refuge inside Roman territory. In 376 AD, they crossed the Danube River, but were mistreated and exploited by Roman officials. Tensions exploded into the Battle of Adrianople in 378, where the Roman army suffered a crushing defeat and Emperor Valens was killed. For the first time, the Roman legions were no longer invincible. As the 5th century dawned, the Western Roman Empire became a shadow of its former self. Wealthy elites abandoned civic responsibilities, preferring to retreat to their rural estates. Cities decayed, aqueducts fell into disrepair, and the tax base shrank. The government could no longer afford a professional army, relying instead on hiring barbarian mercenaries, some of whom would eventually turn against their employers. Then came Alaric, leader of the Visigoths. In 410 AD, his forces marched into Rome. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City was sacked. It sent shockwaves through the known world. Saint Jerome, writing from Bethlehem, famously lamented, The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken. But even then, the Western Empire didn't officially fall. It limped on, a wounded giant. The final act came in 476 AD, when a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the teenage emperor Romulus Augustulus. There was no grand battle, no fiery apocalypse, just a quiet, almost administrative end. The imperial regalia was sent to Constantinople, and the Western Roman Empire officially ceased to exist. The Eastern Empire, however, lived on for nearly another 1,000 years as the Byzantine Empire. The fall of Rome was less like a puimamam exploding and more like a slow, suffocating collapse. A combination of economic decay, political chaos, military overreach, shifting demographics, and sheer bad luck. Rome didn't fall because of one single event. It fell because, over centuries, it forgot what had made it strong. Its borders expanded too far, its leaders grew complacent, its economy faltered, and its enemies adapted. And perhaps the most haunting part, many Romans didn't even realize they were living through the end. To them, it was business as usual, until suddenly the empire that had lasted for centuries was gone. The Roman Empire's fall wasn't a single story, it was 1,000 small stories, unfolding over generations. And even as the Western Empire faded, its language, laws, and culture continued to shape the world for centuries to come. In many ways, Rome never truly died. It simply transformed.